All right, so I'm here with my brother, my guy, one of the most creative, one of the, if not the, but one of the most successful artists to come from Baltimore, an incredible guy. You'll see his work at the BMA. You'll see it at popular restaurants in New York. You'll also see it on the walls of Jay-Z's office, Alicia Keys and Swiss Beats house, just to name a few, incredible artist, my guy, Mr. Derrick Adams. How are you today?
I'm great, and I'm happy to be here, and I'm happy to support Cream.
I appreciate this, bro. We're excited to honor you. When we were thinking about who we were going to honor this year, specifically with the theme being that we're raising money to give to the arts programming, it's at the BMA. Um, you were a obviously no-brainer. You're a Baltimore native. You're doing some phenomenal stuff in Baltimore. You're an incredible and accomplished artist. And people like to say painter. I'm like, no, Derek does a lot more than paint. Like he does incredible
Yeah.
stuff. So we're honored to recognize you. I'm happy and honored to call you a friend. I think it's a one-sided friendship. I think it's more of an abusive relationship.
No, I respect you, brother. I respect everything you're doing, and I like you. I like that you are, entering into your creative phase. And you're working out your creative,
Here comes the
impulse,
punchline. Here comes the
and I'm
punchline.
here. I'm here to support it. I'm here to
Here
support
comes the
it, brother. I
punchline.
think. I
No,
think
but
everybody should. I
so
think everybody should practice
I
painting.
wanna tell you this because I don't know if I've come to your studio in Brooklyn. You invited me up. We've hung out several times. I've come to support your Soho House for Basel related stuff, and just you've come to the restaurant. We've always just had a great relationship. I've actually, some people have, and this is not for you, but other people is like, oh, you getting into art now, and it's like, no, bro, like I've been in art. Like, I've been drawing and everything since, like, the age of 5. My mother used to frame black art. My whole basement was a framing studio with Zacto boards and, just everything. Like, so she would frame Annie Lee, Tyson, just a bunch of different people. Like, I know, like, He Ain't Heavy, Blue Monday. I know, like, all of the Buffalo Soldiers. So, like, that
Yeah.
was my early childhood experience, and then my mom used to sell some of my stuff. But we'll get into that. But if you even think about Black Swan, I helped and create I created the entire concept. I've created I work with interior designers to create the feel and experience. The menu, I work with the chef of that. My offices, I design those and just everything. So it's like I've always been very passionate about artistry and just how we express ourselves and how people interact with it. This is now me just stepping into it in a broader form and just on canvas more so than what I've typically done. I've always led with business, but this is more of like the artistry stuff. But enough about me. This interview is about you. I mentioned that you're from Baltimore. How has growing up in Baltimore shaped your creative, your success now, and how did you get into the arts early on?
Well, I grew up in Park Heights. That's where I got most of my education all into high school. And I have always considered myself an artist, even at a really young age, even kindergarten. And I was fortunate enough to have a lot of mentorship within my earlier years with artists who taught me at all the different schools I went to in Baltimore. And my
Where
uncle,
did you
I
go to
went to
like
Edge.
school of the arts or anything?
No, I didn't go to school of the arts. I went to Edgecombe Elementary School. Then I went to Green Spring. Then I went to Northwestern. Then I transferred to Lake Clifton.
You a
So I
late
kind of
graduate?
went. Yeah, I went to Lake. I didn't graduate from Lake. I actually graduated from Harbor City,
Oh,
which
okay.
is like an
Right across the
alternative
street,
school.
Harvard Institute,
Yeah,
Harvard City. Yeah. So
yeah,
I
yeah.
graduated from Lake.
Oh, you did? Okay,
Yeah, I
I
don't think
went to
we've
Lake.
ever shared that. Yeah.
No, Lake was popping.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. It was lit, man. Only the strong
It was
survive up there, baby.
it was a big school. It had like 4 different
Yeah,
quads,
A, B,
A,
C,
B,
A,
C, and
B, C,
D.
and D. Yeah.
Yeah,
And then I
yeah, I
actually
remember that.
went to the Twigs, the School of the Arts, after school program. I
Oh,
didn't
you
want to go there
did?
for
Oh,
high. Yeah, I couldn't. That was too much for me to go for high school. But I
yeah.
went to Twigs. Yeah, but yeah, Lake Clifton, man.
Yeah, I went to Lake, and my mom, eventually we moved on the east side, and we basically stayed on the east side ever since, I went to, so I first transferred. I went from, like, Green Spring, then I went to Dunbar Middle, for a minute. Then I eventually ended up going to Lake, um, which I had a lot of friends on the east side, but I kind of grew up between the west, east, and west. But I've always considered myself an artist.
But hold on,
I've
before you go
always,
there, what I'm
yeah,
hearing in your school story is that you got put out a few different schools. Because that
I
wound
didn't
up
get
at
put.
Harbor City, to go from Lake to Harbor City, only you gotta be
I
very
didn't.
bad to get put out of Lake Harbor
No,
City.
I mean, I was very distracted when I was in Baltimore growing up because I was a creative person and I didn't really have any creative uh, support system that outside of my family. Although they were, the art school was there, you know, uh, the School of the Arts was there. I really didn't fit into those categories of I guess groups because I still was very much like part of the Baltimore community, the local community, and so a lot of my friends were not artists. A lot of my friends were just regular uh types to hang out in Baltimore, and I was like the only artist in my group of friends hanging out. So, my conversation were not really geared towards like art. I did go to Micah for a semester before leaving to go to New York to go to Pratt, where I got my BFA degree. But growing up in Baltimore was always interesting because there was not when I was growing up there was a lot of creative people in the city who I was in communication with, but it was not Baltimore was not considered for me, a city that really supported creativity beyond just the expressive part of what you're doing. Like, not the, it wasn't a financial structure of support in the way other cities really support artists as a lifestyle, as a profession, as something that would be your sole form of income. That was not something that was happening in Baltimore when I was growing up. So I eventually moved to New York to go to school, and I realized that there was an ecosystem that really uh, treated artists in a particular way. The idea of culture is currency, and artists are treated in a different way. Even if you're not selling art, even if you're not famous, just being a creative person was all you had to be. And in like Brooklyn to be supported. I mean, Baltimore at this point right now, I feel that it's at a place where it's realizing how significant support for artists really can be for the city overall, and how art just overall could help with reducing crime. It can reduce like issues with mental health. It could be a very important tool to help balance out some of the disparity what's happening within the Black community and the local community because a lot of young Black people are creative, but they have never had the opportunity to express their creativity or even think about being an artist as a profession, which growing up in Baltimore, that was not an option in conversation if you're talking to someone about your career, like saying you want to be an artist as a full-time job. It was something that was unheard of. And I knew it was possible, but I didn't think it would be possible staying local, but I do feel like it can be now. I do feel like,
Yeah, and
yeah.
you're creating a lot of pathways for that, which we'll speak about in a second. But when did it? Just out of curiosity, when did a part of your journey? When did you realize, like, okay, like you mentioned, being a full time artist wasn't something that people really thought could happen. When did you realize it could happen for you? And in that process, did your style evolve from where it started to where it is now or whatever else?
Um, I always figured, honestly, I always thought that as an artist, I never felt um that I would be growing up in Baltimore, Baltimore has a way of really grounding you and giving you a sense of of confidence in the day-to-day activity of like just surviving, like moving through things, getting things done. So I always kept that attitude even as I started to succeed in my field. I always thought that, being an artist was really more about a freedom of expression and being able to communicate. But I also felt that to be able to do that freely, you needed to have a job that would allow you to do those things. And so I've always taught. Like I've taught like elementary school. Now I teach at Brooklyn College. I've been there for 8 years. I'm a full-time professor. I've taught at Columbia, different schools, George Washington University. So I've always held a teaching job in a lot of ways, regardless of needing it as an income or not. I do it as like being, part of being a public servant. Like, teaching for me is not necessarily inspirational, as some people may feel. Teaching for me is feel like giving back to the community. And I think that what I've been really invested in Baltimore in the city is figuring out a way to help and assist support for the creatives who are occupying space right now, especially the younger artists who are living in Baltimore, because I think Baltimore is one of the last cities that's affordable for the creative community. And I think that we're able to direct support, financial support in the form of buying work or supporting cultural institutions in Baltimore that would be beneficial for artists who want to live and stay in Baltimore and thrive to be able to do so. And I think that for me, it's been really a great challenge to kind of lead that charge to give people another alternative, an artist who to look at, an artist to collect. I
Yeah.
think that there's space for a lot of artists, and I think Baltimore has a great community of talented artists.
And I want to continue to get into that, but I really want the people that's going to listen to this and understand you. When was that moment you realized, like, all right, this can be a full time thing? Like, was it a piece that was sold at a certain price and you was like, oh man, I made some good money. I could keep this up. Like, what was that moment for you?
Um, after teaching for a while and doing a bunch of different things, I think in 2005, 2006, I just became so preoccupied with my studio practice and making art that I really just and I began selling art. A lot of things that's happened to me in my career had things I just kind of fell into.
Mhm.
Like I never had like a goal of what gallery to show with or to show with a gallery necessarily. I never really thought about that as a goal. I mean, my main objective was to continue to keep making art and have a studio and be able to work consistently as an artist and showing when I can and not really thinking about a complete outcome. I mean, I never really thought about that. I mean, I think about making art. I think about conversations around what I'm making. I think about the idea of showing them at some point to somebody in some space. But until maybe, I guess, 10 years ago, things, and again, I've been showing since 2002. I've been showing consistently at 2000. But I never really thought about representation in the way that I am represented now. um, it just happened. I believe that I find that my whole philosophy is about like, if you stay ready, you don't have to get ready. And
Yeah,
so I think that I just was ready. And so I find that most of the relationships I've come across business wise have been pretty seamless because, I'm making work. And when I meet gallerists or collectors, I mean, it's already there. I don't have to catch up or make things for things. Like I'm consistently making work all the time in my studio. So the transition from being an artist without a gallery to an artist who's represented was pretty much the next step.
got it. All right, so let's talk about your art and then we'll get into the Baltimore community. So this year's theme for Cream is trauma, transformation, and triumph. And those are three different type of periods, those are three different stories, those are three different emotions and feelings. What I see in your art is black joy, identity, everyday, like powerful just statements and stuff. Talk to me about what message that you want the viewer to experience or to gather when they're looking at your pieces.
Um, I mean, most of my work is really a combination of many different emotions that I feel mirror Black experience, and from um, a point of view of familiarity, like things that I and I'm in conversation with people, things that I observe growing up, things that I observe on the day to day, being in neighborhoods that are primarily occupied by Black people. So my work is not even like a deliberate attempt to just focus in. It's really more about just being really observant of my surroundings and really pulling from it aesthetics that I find should be highlighted and celebrated and looked at in a critical way that would only empower the community that I'm inspired by making the work. So it's really not just about, happiness, which is something that is important for me to portray for Black experience, and even the human experience to show the multidimensionality of Black life and how we occupy many different spaces and many different emotions, and that, the idea of trauma coexists with joy. It's not something that all of these emotions or all these experiences are kind of intertwined. But I think that a lot of times Black people culturally do not look at the joyful or the more normal experience that we have as uh, is relating to perseverance or resistance or purposeful in the way that we take these moments in between all these other things that are happening around us, because really, we think about the constant um obstruction of our progress. um you really have to think like, it's designed to break us down, and we still uh, you know, persevere in ways that we need to in order for us to, continue with our lives as people. And I think that my work taps into all of those different nuances that I think make us who we are.
Yeah.
And I think that most people can relate to that outside of the Black community if they've had similar experiences that we've had in society, which again, is ongoing. The experience that we have of pushing against things and things pushing against us and things in our way. And, all these different things have been part of our ongoing story. And so my work is just offering viewers an alternative um, to what is, you know, the topic of the day when it comes to Black people and Black
Yeah.
culture. My work talks about the things that we as Black people may not even think of as being really important moments for us to take notice and to really think about as critical moments. And my work uses um, normalcy as critical moments for people to reflect on that also relate to feelings of empowerment and, amusement or relaxation or things that I find are important for younger people to see us in position.
Yeah. I think it's important. What I'm hearing you say is that, we have the ability to control our own narrative and create imagery that speaks to these things, these difficult situations, but also highlighting the positivity and creating how we view ourselves in our situations. Speaking of these situations and how we view ourselves, you're doing a lot of phenomenal work here in Baltimore to try to help change the situations and create opportunities for Baltimoreans, and then just other artists. Specifically, your program, what is it, Last Resort?
Uh,
Uh,
yeah, Last Resort, the
yeah,
residency that's part of
yeah,
the Charm City Cultural Cultivation that I started. That's in Waverly, which has been in existence since 2020. And it's been a residency for creatives to come for 6 weeks to work, to relax, to basically do what my work uh, does in the relationship to the art space. This is an opportunity for people to actually enact and do the things that I make work about at this residency.
nice. So someone, they can just come lock in there for weeks and then work on their own art, have leisure there, have dinner there, and they're just kind of like just avoiding the distractions and able to lock in.
Yeah, a lot of people who work in in the cultural space, they work mostly in inner cities, and I think a lot of people don't look at inner city as a place of leisure or a place of relaxation. Especially, I know Black people usually don't think of the inner city is that place where you can get away by going to, because a lot of times we occupy those spaces. But I found that for me, I'm less interested in rural spaces. I really enjoy urban spaces more, and I am very relaxed being in those spaces. And I think that what I'm trying to accomplish with the retreat is to show that a retreat could also be a state of mind, and it can happen in any given space that you purposely carve out for yourself. And so the retreat, which is residential property that I purchased in 2019, really serves as a space where people can come together, have conversations over the fire pit. They can work in the workspace. We have exhibition in our outpost, which is a small like little chapel space on the property where we have like little small exhibitions, and then we have these meals that we and curate and invite people to come. So there's a lot of activity happening, and it's very casual, very informal. But artists can come there and work if they wanted to. Writers come, musicians come, visual artists, a broad range of creatives come to commune with each other. And that's kind of what my intention was, because I grew up in a very communal environment. I have a really big family in Baltimore. My
Mhm.
mom is one out of 11. And I have a ton of family. We're very close. And so I find that um, this communion that we share within our community is very rewarding and very rejuvenating. And so I wanted to really think about in our space kind of um, adopting all of those principles. And again, like, I grew up in church. And so I'm not a church goer at this point in my life, but there are things that I took away from my experience growing up in church. And one thing that I remember was the way that we communed with each other, and the way that we share food, the way we caught up on the weekly history when we downstairs in the kitchen or in a communal space. And that's the thing that I really pull from my experience growing up in Baltimore and going to church and being in the choir. And so those things kind of stay with me, even as an artist. So I think that this is maybe an extension of what I learned in the relationship to communion, that I'm sharing with the creative community. And the residency, again, is an international platform. So there are artists who are from Baltimore and the DMV area, but there are most of the artists who are invited are from national or international background.
So it's amazing. But I want to go back to something you said. I got 2 questions. I know we got to wrap up. Um, were you on a church choir? Were you a baritone? Like, did you have a solo? Like,
Yeah, I was a baritone. Yeah, I sing on the choir. Yeah, I sing on a gospel choir. Most of my younger teenage years to my from my younger kid years up into my early adult years, I sang in
Yeah,
a mass choir.
yeah.
Most of the people in the choir were my family members. It probably was like maybe 30 of us, maybe.
Well,
And
you
we
have a whole musical family, like people that have created. I don't know if everybody knows, but your cousins and uncles or whatever else have
yeah,
done very
yeah.
well in the music industry.
Yeah.
So that makes sense. Okay, so 2 questions. One, it could be a brief answer because I think that you already touched on this. The work that we're doing with Cream is raising the money to help kids access art programming and resources through the BMA. Um, for people that's watching, can you talk about the importance of being able to pour into these kids at these younger age and have that art become an influence in them, and how it can be pivotal in changing their lives?
I mean, I think that, the statistics that kind of back this up, but it's really important, especially in um, areas in the inner city where there's a lot of misguided energy from younger people. Having anchor spaces that are occupied by artists really connect with community in a lot of ways. A lot of times, younger people who I've even noticed in Baltimore, and some of my friends who have nonprofits, or people who are doing things in the community, how young people, think of these spaces as sanctuaries. And a lot of times it keeps them out of trouble. It gives them a sense of like purpose and community and a way that, other fields do not. Like sports, you have to know how to play sports. To be an artist, art and what is art is always subjective, and being creative is something that most people have within them, and being supported in that way is really the most relevant part of young people's learning experience. Is the support we give to them when they're experimenting with material. And I think that, having art be a more prominent part of younger people's experience in Baltimore across the city will definitely, I think, assist in some of the challenges that we have in the city when it comes to like violence, gun violence, and things like that. I think that a lot of times kids just don't have anywhere to go, and they aren't really thinking about all the alternatives of letting your energy out, venting, doing things that, when I was growing up, we had recreation centers, and every school had like a rec. And so we would go to the rec after school. We would play chess, we would play checkers. Some people play sports, some people drew. We had different things that happened throughout the time. We did our homework there. We had teachers who worked after hours in the rec who helped us with our homework. So it was a whole totally different experience growing up in Baltimore for me, which may be different from this generation that is growing up in Baltimore. But when I was growing up, in Park Heights, we actually had a lot more support, and
Yeah.
we had a lot more public programs that existed after school. And I think that art for me um, is something that could happen, you know, in these neighborhoods. And I believe that even our storefront that we have on the corner of 31st and Greenmount, which is our headquarters, is a public space that we try to do as many free programs as possible to bring people in, not just young people, but people in the community to take advantage of all of the free programming that we have. We're from movie screenings to music related sessions to readings, poetry readings to authors, book signings. We do all these different things in this space that I find is successful, but I think that we need more spaces like that in the city.
Yeah, and you're doing great work with it, man. And I can continue to go down your resume from what you're doing with Artscape to just everything. And so I appreciate you for that. My last question is going to be a little bit more personal one, because you said art is subjective and that people should just it doesn't have to be perfect and everything else like that. So I know that I've reached out to you before. We were just talking, and I was we was talking about Black Swan or something, and I was like, "Yo, I paint too," and I showed you some of the paintings. You were like, I was like, "Yo, I painted these." And he was like, Yeah, I could tell." And then you
No,
said, and then I showed you some more.
I said keep painting.
Yeah, yeah. You was like, "Yo, you know what? I think that you're doing great stuff in the behavioral health world. I'm doing great stuff in the art world. I think maybe we should just keep it that way." And then
Stay
I
in
showed you
lane.
something when I was at
Yeah.
the BMA when we were there for the Amy Sherrills Gala. I was like, "Yo, look, these some new pieces." You was like, "You're consistent." So
I
what I
mean,
was,
yeah,
so
yeah,
what,
yeah,
so,
yeah.
so my question for you would be, as I approach this first exhibit showing my stuff, Transformation Triumph, Trauma Transformation and Triumph, as I prepare for this, outside of not telling me just call in sick for the day, what advice would you give me as I approach this exhibit?
Well, I think that, for every artist, exhibiting your work is a vulnerable experience. Like you're making stuff, usually artists are making things in isolation and then they put it to the world. The world critiques it, they embrace it or they reject it. You know, Honestly, I'm a person who looks at art all the time. I'm a teacher, I'm a professor. I'm communicating with younger artists all the time. I'm talking to artists who are coming out of graduate school. I'm talking about artists who are self taught. I'm talking to artists who are making all types of things. And, you know, really is no real way to critique any particular artist's work because consistency is what really um, is the outcome that convinces people about the commitment that the artists have to their crafts. So when someone starts painting, it doesn't excite me when someone starts. It excites me when I see people consistently doing it for a long period of time and I know that they are committed to doing it. And art is the easiest profession to get into because it doesn't require any application to do it. Like you can just say, I'm an artist and you can make art. And there's a lot of people doing that. So for me as an artist who went to like graduate school, undergraduate, who taught kids and started art class, who worked in the museum, now at Brooklyn College, looking at portfolios and resumes and curating shows and things like that I'm doing, it's I'm going to be the most critical person to look at your stuff. If you say like, look at my work, like I'm gonna reflect on all of that experience that I've had looking at art and communicating with artists to give you the answer that you asked me, you know? So it's really difficult to ask someone like me, like, what do you think about my work when I'm looking at, when I'm writing recommendations for graduate school and recommendations for art grants and different things like that. So if an artist who started off working, unless you are like some a savant painting, uh, Michelangelo style painting. Even that is technically, yes, that would be great if you could paint, photorealism if you just started off. But even that, I wouldn't consider someone to say you are a great artist because you have a technical ability to paint exact images. It really has to do with the essence of the artist and their consistency of me looking at the work and realizing that you have a voice and that your work is speaking in a particular way based on this longer commitment of making art. Because what happens with me, like the reason why artists get new galleries or get galleries is because gallerists are looking from beyond um, at your consistency and then looking at the years that you put into making work. And so they're using that as a tool to determine how working with you could be beneficial for them as a business. And that business is based on people being able to look at your work in its totality and see the consistency of what you've been doing in your work and all the things that you have accomplished from doing what you're doing.
Yeah.
So it's like a whole other thing. And so every gallery goes up to, becomes even more microscopic lens looking at your progress. Like, you have the lower tier gallery we start off with, the younger artists doing stuff. Then you have the middle gallery, and then you end up in the gallery um, that will most likely be your last stop. Um, and that gallery is usually a gallery that has witnessed your plight from beginning all the way up to where you are. And
Yeah.
so when I'm looking at any artist's works, I'm always thinking about, you're looking at when you look at one artist's work, you're looking at everybody.
Mhm.
Like you can't remove like the database that you have as an artist, especially when you become an educator and you're professional. You're always looking at work. So you're in your mind, you have hundreds of things floating around all the time to determine your response to anyone who's asking about their work. And
Yeah.
so, I have a niece at Pratt. She's a junior. She sends me images of her work all the time. I have people on social media send me images of their work all the time. Artists who work in my studio, who assist me, send me images of their work when they're working on stuff. So I'm always looking at works
Yeah.
of artists working on stuff, you
Yeah. No,
know?
I
And
just
so,
I find it
so
I was when you said it, me and you have this funny we have this funny relationship, so
yeah.
I'm like when you said it, I'm, like, laughing like, "Yo, this dude, this" but like you said, it's consistency and everything else, man, but listen, I know your time is short, my time is short today, but I'm excited to recognize you and to honor you for all of the amazing stuff that you shared, and we didn't even get into your true just, like, incredible accomplishments, which I'm hoping that we'll be able to have a follow-up or so and do more of. So I appreciate you logging on today. I hope that the people that are watching will be able to learn a bit more about you and figure out how to get involved with Cream, but then in addition, outside of that, get involved with everything that you're doing so that we can continue to, use our platforms to create impact. So thank you.
No, I appreciate that. I'm honored to be awarded. I also, congratulate the other awardees. I think that Baltimore is a great city where we can really thrive creatively and really figure out how to support the creative community in a more sustainable manner. I think that these conversations and these types of awards only bring highlight the importance of art and creativity and how it can impact communities. And I'm happy to be a part of it. So thank you.